Here inside Venezuela's foreign ministry, the legacy of violent U.S. intervention in Latin America looms large. You can see a monument and room is dedicated to the memory of Salvador Allende. I just wrapped up a wide-ranging conversation with Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza. We discussed why he believes Washington's efforts to overthrow the Maduro government have failed and why he's leading an international movement to reaffirm support for the ideas enshrined in the UN's charter: territorial integrity, self-determination, and sovereignty. Mr. Foreign Minister Arreaza, thank you so much for making time for me. You've just returned from the United Nations in New York, where you made quite the major announcement about the formation of a group of countries which will be dedicated to preserving rights guaranteed in the UN's charter. Which countries are participating with you? How will the group function? And why is a re-emphasis of these principles needed at this time?
It's really important, the group, because it's not about defending President Maduro or even Venezuela. This is about defending international law, the principles of the UN Charter that all the countries signed and subscribed and that have to respect. You cannot be a member of the United Nations and not respect the most basic principles of the United Nations. So it wasn't an initiative from Venezuela. This was a suggestion from our friends. When I arrived on Monday, I went to the reception for the 40th anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. And then several PRs, ambassadors, gathered and they came up with the idea. Mm-hmm. And I said, we agree, it's necessary, not because, and one of them said, if we let this happen to Venezuela, who's next? Right. So we can't let that happen. And it's still being created, still some other countries are joining, but important ones. I mean, because of the size or because of the demographic as well, importance like China, like Russia, Iran, Venezuela, and many others that are beginning to join. And many from Africa, many from Asia, some from Latin America, the Caribbean. And the most important thing is that it's like the NonAligned Movement when it was created, but reloaded, adapted to the 21st century.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because the opposition claims to have the support of the international community, but it sounds like you're saying your experience at the UN this week doesn't support that assertion.
I mean, the West, what the so-called Western, European and American governments that are subordinated to Washington, they all agree. Even very far away countries that have no connection at all with Venezuela, like Macedonia or even Ukraine, there's nothing, we have nothing, but they are taking decisions not because they want to, but because they have to. They have been pressed to do so. The American, when I mean American, North American diplomacy is pressing all over. All the ambassadors are going to the ministries of foreign affairs in all the capitals of the world, pressing in order to de-recognize our government and recognize this fiction that has been created in Venezuela.
So now you will take the lead in showing there's a group of countries that are dedicated to territorial integrity, self-determination, and sovereignty. Russia's deputy foreign minister said this week that the UN Security Council will not pass any resolution that's hostile to the legitimate government here in Caracas. You may remember in December when Russia sent a military plane here, your counterpart in the States, Mike Pompeo, denounced the message and described it as, quote, two corrupt governments squandering public funds and squelching liberty and freedom while their people suffer. How do you respond to Pompeo, and how important is Russia, your relationship with Russia, in weathering this storm?
Our relationship with Russia has been improving, since at least 2000. Our president, our late president, Comandante Chavez, he was aware that we couldn't have a unipolar world and that we had to stop being a colony from the United States. So he opened Venezuela to the world and to new relations, especially new poles like the Russian, like the Chinese, and others even in Africa. So our relationship with Russia is fair, it's transparent. When the United States cut all the military assistance to Venezuela, all our equipment, military equipment, was originally from the States, but then they blocked everything. So we had to defend ourselves, we had to protect our people, so we looked over to Russia. So we have, but there's no way you can tell that, you can say that this relationship is against someone. No, it's not against the States or whomever. This is in favor of the Venezuela, in favor of the Russian people as well, and it's our right to have relations with whomever we choose.
So how do you react when Pompeo takes to Twitter to say things like this?
Nothing surprises us from the U.S. Spokespeople. I mean, they are obsessed with Venezuela. They make up stories every single day. They recognize this fellow who was self-proclaimed president in the middle of a square of the street. So they are, you couldn't say they are logical at the moment. So nothing surprises us. But they are wrong about Venezuela. They are mistaken about Venezuela.
You mentioned the relationship with Russia that's gotten stronger since 2000. It's interesting because since the fall of the Soviet Union, the United States has been able to wage regime change war or carry out coups from Yugoslavia to Iraq to Haiti without any international counterweight. But that cycle seems to have broken in Syria, where the Assad government, with the help of Russia, was able to resist US objectives. What lessons do you take from Syria?
Syria is a big lesson for all. That's why this group in the UN is being created, because we cannot let this happen. Syria was, because okay, they made it, no? They prevailed, but how many people died? How many cities were destroyed? It was a bloodshed all over. So we don't want that to happen. Not in Venezuela, of course, not in Nicaragua or Cuba, that this man Bolton has said is the troika of evil, no? And nowhere in the world. So we have to stop it from happening, and Syria is very important. And Mr. Trump says it, no? Mm-hmm. It was a mistake to invade Iraq, it was a mistake to invade Afghanistan, Libya, and in his withdrawing from Syria. So it's lessons for us in the world, but also for the United States. Mm-hmm. They did things wrong, they killed people, they never find weapons of mass destruction, they never proved anything in the other cases, and just because they wanted oil, natural resources, or because they wanted to dominate the world.
It sounds like almost you believe the international order changed through the process of this war. Do you think we're experiencing that now? This is part of what you're doing at the UN?
The international order, it was supposed to become, after the falling of the Berlin Wall, everything indicated that it was going to become a unipolar world that was going to be ruled by Washington and by the European countries allied with Washington. It didn't happen. No, other poles began to be forged. And now we have this situation in which we have to defend all the peoples. And in order to defend all the peoples, we have to change the international order, but not only from the point of view of politics, also the financial, the economics of the international order have to be changed, because now you see these commercial trade wars. No? There's a different kind of warfare happening, and using the dollar in order to press economies, and blocking and all these so-called sanctions against countries. So we have to change the rules of the game in order to protect the rights of the people.
The Trump administration's eagerness to implement sanctions not just against Venezuela but Iran has even forced Europe to search for alternatives to things like the SWIFT financial system to make payments to Iran. And also it appears to have pushed countries like Turkey and India in your orbit. How are you working with countries like that to circumvent US sanctions?
It is like the natural flow of a river, no? We come together because it's the only way to survive. The US elite is attacking all of us. So we have to join, we have to be together and stop this from happening. So we are working, we have a very good relationship with Turkey, India also. The oil we were sending to the US, to our company, to Citgo, now we're going to redirect it to India, to China, and we're going to be paid cash in the market price. So it's the damage that they intended to do with the sanction was not so bad. Of course it is, because those are assets which cost over than $10 billion, no? And that's from the Venezuelans. We couldn't repatriate the profit since 2017. That was already, but now we'll send our oil to other refineries in other parts of the world. So we have to find ways out, new pathways, in order to satisfy the needs of our people in spite of the United States government.
And how did the historic election of AMLO in Mexico open up opportunities for Venezuela politically and economically that weren't previously available under other administrations like Peña Nieto's?
The victory of the popular movement in Mexico is important, but not only for Venezuela, for all of Latin America, and I would say even for the world. Because, I mean, it's one of the most important countries of this hemisphere. It's in the border with the United States, and now we have a government there that respects the difference between the former governments and the Lopez-Obrador government is that he respects his constitution and he respects international law. You see, something so basic, so simple that should happen all over the world makes the difference in Mexico and makes the difference for Latin America. So it's a good news for the Mexican people, for Latin America and for the world.
I want to transition now to some of the work you've been doing in the States. The AP's reported, citing two senior Venezuelan officials, that while in the States you have had 2 meetings with Trump's envoy to Venezuela, Elliot Abrams, and it specifically said during a meeting on January 26th that he threatened Venezuela with US troop deployments. Is this true?
No. I mean, we had a meeting on January the 26th, after the Security Council meeting about Venezuela. For the first time, Venezuela was a topic because we don't pose a threat to security or to peace in the world. But the United States made us a topic, and then immediately afterwards, we met in the headquarters of the United Nations. But it was like an exploratory meeting, no? And this is the first time in many years that we have someone appointed by Trump or by that group that has hijacked the White House and the American government. And it's the first time, so we have to be able to communicate, to meet with him or with whomever that is appointed for that. Dialogue is the main tool that we have in the Bolivarian Revolution, always with our people, with the entrepreneurs, with the private sector, with the opposition, with the United States, with other countries. So we have to be really fair and saying that we consider it's a good opportunity in order, for the first time in many years, in order to maybe make our voices be heard, the version of our country be heard, our version, and we're going to continue sitting with him or with whomever is appointed if they want to sit with us.
So you didn't find it so threatening? Because the report did say that this was something specific he brought up.
I mean, the threats of the U.S. Government happen every hour, no? And but it wasn't that threatening, no.
Did you notice a change between the 2 meetings? Does the Trump administration seem as confident in their policy now as they were at the end of January?
Times changed, and their plan failed, no? The momentum they were looking for was over, is over. And the coup didn't happen. Our military stood up loyal to our constitution. So I believe that the think tanks and all these people must be working 24 hours a day trying to understand what's happening in Venezuela, because nothing that they have planned about Venezuela happens as they would like to.
It's not the first time think tanks are wrong about something, at least the ones in Washington.
Yeah.
I heard you say in another interview that this moment marked the first time the U.S. Declared a coup before the war was even won. You also have Trump administration officials speaking openly about the fact oil is a major motivation behind their aggressive policy. The mask seems to be off. So how is it different for you as Venezuela's top diplomat dealing with the Trump administration compared to a Democratic administration? What differences do you notice?
There are many differences. This administration is shameless. No? They, as you say, they took the mask off and they say exactly what they want and out loud, and all the interests they have are clear. So we want the Venezuelan oil, we don't want an independent process and government being in Venezuela, we hate socialism, and we have to destroy that government, we have to make this happen soon, we want our companies to take the Venezuelan oil to the United States. So in a way it's better because we know exactly what they want and we can negotiate on real basis. No? But of course, it's also sad that the world and the international organisms accept such a government to exist, no? And that the American people voted for such a government. No? Maybe they were framed before they voted.
Russia did it.
Yeah, it's always someone else. No? But I mean, that's not politics, that's not international relations, that is they're like pirates, no? It shouldn't happen, not in this time, not in the 21st century. That's why we created the group in the UN, because that is unbelievable. That's the most important government, because it's very strong, with the most important and powerful armed forces, threatens everyone, threatens the peoples, wants the natural resources from everywhere, and they do it openly. No, maybe before they also had this as their goals, but they had another kind of behavior, and they respected, at least until some point, international law.
The opposition claims to have some officials working abroad, working on their behalf, meaning people in your ministry currently. Is that something you're actually worried about?
No, because it's not really representatives from the opposition, it's representatives from the White House or from the Secretary of State, no? So we're not, it doesn't bother us, especially these men and women that have been appointed to Latin American governments, because it's so sad, no, to see the governments, our neighborhood, no? Some countries of our neighborhood being ruled by such governments. It looks like if this was a big company and Trump is the CEO and the presidents of these countries are the executive directors, so they have to do what they are said to do by Trump. They have to do it well in order for Trump to promote them and so that they can be re-elected or whatever. So it's sad for Latin America, but it doesn't bother us. Our main focus is Washington, because even, I would say, we can have dialogue with the opposition. Now, right now, if they want to. It would be very important. But because the opposition is so dependent of Washington, we would rather have dialogue, as I have with Abrams, President Maduro, with Donald Trump, and I am sure that we could find lots of solutions to all these situations.
It sounds like you're very hopeful, and that your visit to New York reinvigorated that hope.
Yes.
So thank you very much for speaking with me about it.
Thank you, Anya. Thank you very much.